What? No, I'll be here. Well, depending, I mean, if something comes up with Tom. I'm here. But I don't believe it. Well. Gross.
It is now 6:39 and we are out of closed executive session. At this time, we will reconvene the regular meeting of the Board of Education with the pledge to the American flag. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Bucher, Mr. Herrera, Mrs. Hauk, Ms. Mayville, Mrs. Reed Nemick,
Here.
Mrs. Whitcomb,
Here.
Mr. Zickert.
Are there any items on the agenda any members of the board would like to amend or move? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the agenda of the regular meeting of the Board of Education on January 18th, 2022 as presented?
Motion to approve the agenda.
Member Zickert made the motion and Member Herrera seconded the motion to approve the agenda of the regular meeting of the Board of Education on January 18th, 2022 as presented. Discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Zickert.
Yes.
Mr. Herrera.
Yes.
Mrs. Whitcomb,
Yes.
Mr. Bucher, Mrs. Hauk, Ms. Mayville, Mrs. Reed Nemick.
Aye. Motion passes. Due to the winter break and students only being in session for 2 weeks, there are no student council reports for January board meeting this evening, and hopefully reports will resume in February. At this time, members of the public and employees of District 100 who submitted comments via email will be read, and those attending in person may make public comments. As a reminder, this is a professional business meeting, and as such, all attendees from board members to speakers to public attendees are reminded to conduct themselves professionally and refrain from the use of profanity, unprofessional language, and/or verbal or personally directed attacks. Verbal comments from the public are restricted to those being delivered during an individual public's comment as indicated on the board agenda. Unsolicited verbal comments, outbursts, and profanity and physical disruptions directed at members of the Board of Education, the superintendent, administrators, and/or audience members are not allowed and will not be tolerated. If such an occurrence occurs, a verbal warning will be given by the president. If an individual is identified as a continued disruption during the board meeting, the individual or individuals may be asked to leave the meeting. If necessary, the president or superintendent may request the assistance of law enforcement to escort the individual or individuals from the building. Per board policy 2230, the board must allow a minimum of 30 minutes of public comment and a 20-minute minimum total length of time for any one subject. If we reach 30 minutes on any given topic this evening, I may request an end to public comment. In order to give the maximum number of people an opportunity to speak, please limit your comments to 3 minutes. All comments provided to the Board of Education via email prior to the meeting have been included in the board packet for public information in case we were to run out of time. Please be sure to state your name for the record. And again, if time allows, comments will be read. And do we have anyone who has? And we do not currently have any emailed comments to be read. Joyce Turnipseed. If it's easier when you speak, you can pull your mask down. And then also your microphone. Just the button goes on, it turns green, and we're good.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. So I am a longtime listener, first-time talker, and I'm here to talk about PAC policies, procedures, and to just walk you through my extreme anger, then my frustration, disappointment, and now a recommendation. Just to give you a background, I am the co-president of the Performing Arts Boosters with Belvedere High School. This is my 7th year. I've been volunteering in this district in the executive parent role. Not to toot my own horn, but I am one of a handful of people that are responsible for raising over $20,000 for funds when I was at Meehan on their PTO. So I tell you that because I have a history in this district. I know how to organize things. I know how to raise money, and I thought I knew the right way to go about things. So here's my email correspondence with Michaela Miracle, and this is by no way to call Michaela Miracle out. She is the PAC manager. This is just to walk you very briefly through the series of events. I reached out to Michaela Miracle on Monday, November 29th. Our music boosters, we wanted to have a parents' night out and provide 4 hours of supervision for students of the district and our students that are part of the music boosters, along with the adults, would be showing approved movies and just using the PAC. Michaela approved it after I filled out the application. I do want to pass the application out, and I'll tell you why. Eyeball it. So long story short, it was approved. The only hiccup is we didn't have a custodian. Then she emails back, we have a custodian. I email back to her, running the fun fair at Meehan for 4 years, saying we are in charge of paying custodial fees, correct? Her last comment to me, December 12th, her last comment to me, Tuesday, December 7th, so Tuesday before the event. After inquiring about custodial fees, I found out the event on school facility on a Sunday needs to be approved by the school board. This is something I did not foresee. The next school board meeting is the 20th. Unfortunately, the fundraiser cannot be held. I apologize for the inconvenience. If you have questions, contact district central office. That was my extreme anger. I'm glad I didn't come in December because I would have embarrassed myself. I was so angry. We had already published. We had students line up to make money for their Disney trip, and we had a nice response. Plenty of people wanting to take advantage of coming. So then I started digging. Didn't see anything about Sunday. Went through all the policies that are on board docs. The only thing I found about Sunday was you have to have a Sunday off and talk about the Constitution or something. I don't know. It was in one of the policies. So then I'm thinking to myself, well, maybe Miss Miracle's new. I saw she was hired January of 22 of 2018. The board approved her to be hired for the PAC.
Mrs. Turnipseed,
Yeah.
we're not discussing Mrs. Miracle or Ms. Miracle right now, just the policy.
Okay,
in
I
regard.
understand. So then I looked just to see, whose responsibility is it to tell people that if you need the facilities on a Sunday, there's a special procedure. I passed the application because it's not on there. So I'm here now through my anger, through my frustration, and having to make multiple phone calls canceling the event to recommend that on that application, that whoever the PAC manager is, that information is put on the application. Had it been on the top in bold, if you're requesting a Sunday, that there is additional policy procedure, however, because I couldn't find it anywhere until I Googled in a separate search on board docs, and I found a form from 2016 where a teacher asked to have Sunday use. And so it's very frustrating. Our kids lost out on, money for them to go to Disney. We've taken over the Disney trip. The board's no longer doing it. So we're working, or the school's no longer, it's no longer under the school's name, I should say. It's under Boosters. So it was very embarrassing to our group, and it kind of impacted our reputation. And we've got a lot of negative flashback from it. So my recommendation is to please put that on, because I would hate to see somebody else go through this, especially a new parent who is not as familiar with the process. Thank you.
Ms. Turnipseed. Do we have any other comments? At this time, public comment will be closed. We'll move on to committee reports. Business Services Committee meeting January 3rd. Mrs. Hauk, do you have anything you'd like to add or highlight in the Business Services Committee report?
I did just notice that I wrote Billy 80. I had not seen that before. My apologies to Dr. 80. I've never called him Billy before, but it's kind of cute. So, no, I think we're talking about everything else. I think the common theme in there was our finance department. We're not comfortable moving on a few things because of that. So, yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for the Board Business Services Committee members? And Mr. Booker, I'm not excluding you. I just know that you were not at the meeting. Okay, moving on. Curriculum Committee meeting, January 12th. Mr. Zickert, do you have anything you would like to add or highlight from your Curriculum Committee meeting?
Not too much, just very quickly. One of the things not on the file attachments was a discussion of the dual language program, which has been a very successful program, I think, in the district over the last several years. There was a good question though that I paid attention to the question, but I guess I hadn't thought about it before. One of the people at the meeting was hoping that someday we will have dual language opportunities on the south side of town like we do for two places on the north. And I think it never dawned on me to think about that, because I guess I should have when I haven't, but it does. In most times in the district, we have trying to be equitable among most sides of town for the most part. And I think that person did have a legitimate point that if we do look to expand the program, which I think they are talking about doing, we need to look at the south side as a priority, in my opinion. I think the only other thing that came in the meeting, we had a pretty lengthy discussion on K-8 math improvements. There was a lot of discussion on that, a lot of good back and forth. So I think I put some of the questions in the attachments. So if you're interested, you can look at them. I think that was about it. I think the concern of the person there was that we have two schools on the north that have it and none on the south, so it's 2-0, not 1-1. Why it was like that, I have absolutely no idea. But I do know in the past, when it came to college level courses and things like that, college credit courses back in the day, that was a hot button issue for people in the community, especially when I was the ones that were at BHS. So I understand. I just think that if we do look to the future, and they were talking about it at the meeting at least, that the south side should be a priority. I'm not saying we do it tomorrow. If we look to expand, I think they ought to get at least the first look, so to speak.
And I think the challenge would be more at the secondary level. Running it at both middle schools, both high schools would be a super big challenge. Kids can opt in at Seth and at Lincoln. So there is, if people want to opt their kids in, and then I think those kids, it's kind of an exception. Those kids then can go on to Central and North, even if they're in the BHS district. But it's, we have parents from Caledonia complain that the kids at Seth and Lincoln get priority for the dual program. There's just not enough staff to run it at all the schools, and there's not the ratio of Spanish speaking kids to English speaking kids that exists at, like, you couldn't do it at Perry, for example, would just be one. And I know that's on the north side town, but there are significant staffing challenges to dual. So, but I mean, I agree. I think to the extent we can keep things equitable in all areas, we should try to do so.
Just an opportunity to look outside of the box. If we can't provide or due to staffing, then maybe we do an opt-in program and offer busing for those that opt in. So that way they're not being penalized, isn't the right word, but that they don't feel as though they can't opt in because they don't have the opportunity to get their kids to and from school when they need to be picked up and not. Correct. So just always looking outside of the box if staffing is the issue. Anything else? Okay, next on the agenda is consent action items. Are there any items on the consent agenda any members of the board would like to take out for separate consideration? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve consent agenda items 1 through 8 as presented? Member Whitcomb made the motion and Member Haupt seconded the motion to approve consent agenda items 1 through 8 as presented. Discussion? This month, we do not have any donations, so roll call, please.
Mrs. Whitcomb,
Aye.
Mrs. Hauk, Mr. Booker, Mr. Zickert, Ms. Mayville,
Aye.
Mr. Herrera, Mrs. Reed Nemec.
Aye. Motion passes. Next, we move on to roll call action items. Do I have a motion regarding the memorandum of understanding between District 100 and Belvedere Educational Support Team?
So moved.
What is, I'm
What
sorry,
is-
what is the
What is the motion?
What did you ask for? the
I
motion
asked,
on?
I asked if there
For the
was a,
memorandum of
if
understanding?
there was a motion regarding the memorandum of understanding.
So you're not asking for a particular motion?
Correct.
Is there a specific memorandum of understanding you were referencing?
Is your motion to approve the memorandum of understanding?
Well, what memorandum of understanding are you referencing?
That's what I'm asking you.
What is the memorandum of understanding that's being referenced in this agenda item?
memorandum of understanding between District 100 and Belvedere Education Support Team.
Dr. Weisman, is there a particular memorandum of understanding that is being referenced in this agenda item?
The memorandum of understanding is attached. It's titled Computer Lab Assistance and Level 1 Techs.
I move to approve the attached memorandum of understanding.
Member Mayville made a motion to approve the attached memorandum of understanding between District 100 and Belvedere Educational Support Team, and Member Herrera seconded the motion. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Mayville,
Aye.
Mr. Herrera, Mr. Zickert,
Aye.
Mrs. Whitcomb,
Aye.
Mr. Booker, Mrs. Hauk, Mrs. Reed Nemick.
Aye. Motion passes 7-0. Do I have a motion regarding the substitute pay?
I'll second.
Member Herrera made a motion to approve the substitute pay. Is that correct? Mr. Herrera, to approve the substitute pay?
Correct.
Okay, and Member Zickert seconded the motion. Excuse me? Member Herrera made a
I
motion.
understand that. I guess I didn't know we changed the format. Did this happen last month? And I wasn't.
No, it's just what I asked.
I have no problem with it. I just would have liked to. We're
Okay,
just repeating things like Mr. Zickert does usually then. Motion. I don't know what's going on.
okay, so if I ask for a motion, then you would word the motion how you want it approved, if you make the motion.
I just would have liked to have known ahead of time.
Okay,
I've never done it this way my whole time on the board. I'd rather be prepared ahead of time.
okay. Any other discussion?
I'm fully in, I fully, I think, yes, we should definitely increase the substitute pay. We need to encourage people to come into our schools and sub as much as we can. My dad subs for the district, and so I'm going to abstain from this, but I just want everyone to know that I completely support increasing the sub pay.
I would like to say I support the sub pay increase too, but I'm not going to vote either because my wife does periodically sub for the district. So I'm going to abstain too.
Okay, I have no one who subs for the district and I support it 100% as well. So that's a good thing. And we're voting to approve each of the tiers and levels that are within the recommendation, right? We're just all encompassing, we're voting one time for all of them. Is that correct? Got it. Okay.
And just to be clear, one thing we didn't include, so what the proposal is what the pay given to the substitutes is. Just as a reminder, because we use a staffing agency, there is a markup. So an increase of $10 will cost us as a district about $13. An increase of $5 will cost us actually about $7.5 because of the markup with the staffing agency. So
That's money we would be paying Kelly that.
we would be paying
additional-
Kelly.
Yeah.
Yes.
A 30% fee?
Did I do my zeros wrong? I think it's more like a 3. Did I do my zeros wrong? My decimal? Let me look it up.
$10 to $13. And is this something that we need to approve in the contract, or does approving this allow the contract to be changed?
The markup is slightly, it's a 1.3, about a 1.3 markup. So a $110 pay rate costs us $147, for example. We don't have to approve anything in the contract for that to happen. That's their markup is part of the addendum on the contract.
Other discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Herrera. Mr. Zickert,
Abstain.
Ms. Mayville,
Abstain.
Mrs. Hauk, Mr. Booker, Mrs. Whitcomb,
Aye.
Mrs. Reed Nemick.
Aye. Motion passes 502. Do I have a motion regarding the student fees for the 22-23 school year?
Make a motion to approve the student fees for the.
Member Mayville made a motion to approve the student fees for the 22-23 school year as attached, and member Booker seconded the motion. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Mayville,
Aye.
Mr. Booker, Mr. Herrera, Mrs. Whitcomb,
Aye.
Mrs. Hauk, Mr. Zickert, Mrs. Reed Nemick.
Aye. Motion passes 7-0. Do I have a motion for the transportation contract renewal?
I moved. I second.
Member Herrera made the motion and member Mayville seconded the motion to approve the transportation contract renewal. Any discussion?
My husband works for the transportation department, so I'll be abstaining.
In the contract, Mr. Greg Brown is listed as Director of Business Services. Can we just strike
Mhm.
through that and just have Director of Business Services?
Yep, we will do that.
Mr. Herrera, are you okay with that? Necessary.
No, we would have to strike it anyway since he's not employed here.
Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Herrera, Ms. Mayville,
Aye.
Mr. Zickert, Mrs. Whitcomb,
Aye.
Mr. Booker, Mrs. Hauk, Mrs. Reed Nemick.
Aye. Motion passes 7-0. Do I have a motion for the ECRA contract renewal?
I move to approve the ECRA contract renewal.
Member Mayville made a motion to approve the ECRA contract renewal, and member Zickert seconded the motion to approve the ECRA contract renewal. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Mayville,
Aye.
Mr. Zickert,
Aye.
Mr. Booker, Mr. Herrera, Mrs. Hauk, Mrs. Whitcomb,
Aye.
Mrs. Reed Nemick.
Aye. Motion passes 7-0. Do I have a motion regarding the behavioral health services agreement?
I move to approve the behavioral services health agreement.
Member Mayville made a motion to approve the behavioral health services agreement, and member Hauk seconded the motion to approve the behavioral health services agreement. Any discussion?
I'll just say I'm for getting them this, as long as we have it all squared away contractually, that it is in line with ESSER and how it's distributed and how our contract already reads with them.
You have any specifics on that?
Most of it's been gone over in the past week.
we do not have the opportunity to add these services to the existing contract so that all the dates would remain congruent. There'd be no potential gap or anything. Was it not an option to do it that way, to simply add this to the list of services for the additional pricing that we were discussing? I mean, to the UW Health Clinic contract is what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I wasn't part of the initial negotiations with them. I was just part of the negotiations with them after the attorney through the proposal this month. And I just didn't bring that up as a possibility with them. So it could have been an option. I don't know if that was discussed prior and declined.
Well, and you can't really just add things to a contract. It would be an addendum.
Some type of
Whether there's a
addendum.
separate contract or an addendum is 601. I mean, you can align everything in the separate contract, all the dates in this contract. It doesn't matter whether it's a separate contract or addendum.
But the dates don't currently align. And if we vote tonight to approve it, we know that, right? We just accept that.
Yep.
That they're different. The other question I have is that, believing that these are very needed and valuable services, we've had a number of sources weigh in on that and available to obviously all of our district employees. But this particular contract limits the participation to employees, only employees and their family that are on our insurance plan. And so one of the questions I asked this week and that I would continue to bring up is, if this, as I believe has been, demonstrated repeatedly and been requested repeatedly, we believe that this is services that are needed by our staff. Is there some discussion of how we might make those services available to people? Do we plan to? Can we? Is there anything we can do for those employees who will not have access to these services at the clinic by virtue of not being on our health plan? Because we have a significant number of our employees who are not on, for whatever reason, they're not on our health plan.
I would assume that most of those employees are not on our health plan by choice. I mean, all of our employees have the opportunity to be part of our health plan, correct?
The full-time employees do, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
We have part-time employees that aren't working 600 hours, at least during the year, they wouldn't be.
so who
yes.
knows what those employees have as far as health insurance and benefits of
Correct.
their healthcare plans, and that's not something we can really control. I mean, either you join our health insurance plan and you get the benefits of being on our health insurance plan, which would include this, or you make the choice not to, and you don't get those.
That's currently
benefits.
how it's set up, yes.
Yeah.
We could
And I understand
definitely
that.
look into
I just
that.
think it's important to say, I mean, again, I'm not saying we can't fix that, right? We can't fix and make everybody be on our healthcare plan. I'm simply saying, I think based on the fact that we've repeatedly heard that this is necessary for our staff, if there is a way for us to problem solve, to find a way to make some level of support available for those employees that are not on our healthcare plan and thereby would not be able to participate in these services, it wouldn't be something I would be opposed to having explored. That's all I'm saying.
I will explore that. this
And I
month.
suppose there would be a cost to that, obviously, because our employees
be
who
some
get
type of
access
cost.
to this pay for it by virtue of paying for our insurance. So that would be the thought process.
You could probably go, I don't know. I don't know. as much
Somebody
how somebody has to pay. for
Somebody
the
has to pay for it.
services.
So either it would be the district paying for it or
Correct.
employees paying
Yes.
themselves for it.
Somebody
Okay.
would have to pay for it.
At this point, though, this is being brought under the ESSER 3 application grant. So the
Correct.
services, if they were paid for out of the ESSER grant, would anybody within our district that is a staff member would be able to use them if we used ESSER funds to explore what Mrs. Whitcomb has requested.
We could do that.
And I'm not even, I don't know where the specific need lies. So
Sure.
I'm not saying we need to spend a lot of time on this. I'm just saying that this has been, very well established to be a need for our employees across a number of levels and domains, right, of employment. And so I'm just saying, if we can find a way, maybe there is an interest or need. I don't know. I don't know how many of the employees, 1,834, I believe was the number that you provided, Dr. Weisman. I don't know how many of them will avail themselves of the services that will be available. Maybe it's a non-starter. I'm just saying, I think we would all want to say, to the greatest extent that we can, we would make an effort to support, those within and without, in and outside of our insurance plan.
Sure.
One not speak, I'm sorry. One last quick follow-up question. You said that our board attorney looked at this and was all right on it, because I've read both of them, and there may have been a couple things I may have had questions about, but he's way smarter than I am. So I just wanted to make sure he signed off on all this and said it's fine the way it is.
Yeah, so the board attorney did look at the original contract that we had, made some suggestions to us to modify the contract. Some of those we were able to negotiate and exactly as he had requested. Some of them we kind of met in the middle and found some middle ground with them. He did look at the final version. I think his biggest concerns were, but I think I'm summarizing, so if anybody else remembers something different, I think his biggest concerns were just making sure that the business office is aware of the renewal timeline, and he's always a little concerned about the renewal timeline. We did get some modifications to the renewal timeline, but generally he didn't. It seemed like he was saying the board could definitely sign off on this as long as they understand that there's a risk with an automatic renewal. I do know that we'll continue to explore an option for our staff. I know that we do have an employee assistance program. Maybe Dr. Johnson, if you could I know you've updated the staff about that generally over the last couple of months.
Right.
Maybe you
It
can give
does
the board an
offer some
update.
short-term counseling,
Oh, there, okay.
right? It's a quick assessment and then some short-term. We continue to make staff aware of it. It is fairly new for our staff. And so there's flyers in the schools, but we continue to try to push that avenue as well.
I'll find out some more on that and other options we have.
In regards to the term of this, this term would be ending January of 2025, provided we gave a 90-day prior end or 90-day notice prior to the end. So roughly October of 2024. Or it would automatically renew for 2 years if we didn't give notification by roughly October, November of 2024, which would outlive our actual clinic contract. So we could potentially have a behavioral services contract without having a supporting clinic contract within the clinic.
Correct. Our intention is that we would continue to renew the district clinic, but if we did decide to discontinue those services, the physical services, physical support, physical wellness services there, we could still offer just a part-time mental health services there, or just come to some agreement with the provider on a different location to provide the services. That's how I imagine that would roll if that's what happened.
When do we have to use our ESSER 3 funding by?
Let me pull it up, but I believe we have 2 or 3 years at this point, and that's assuming that they don't give us an extension, which I know a lot of districts are having some difficulty spending in that time frame, but I can pull it up.
So potentially the ESSER funds that are being funneled to this wouldn't cover the length of this contract.
Correct.
Correct.
I'm just going to say personally, yep, there has been an established need. I voted yes in August to approve the ESSER 3 grant application. I don't see that there's not a need. I'm strictly looking at the contract and the contract term conflict, as well as possibly running out before ESSER funds are done, or possibly running out before the clinic, or excuse me, the clinic running out before this one. I won't be saying yes to the contract per se, but just wanted to let everybody know that.
Question before we vote. Is it possible for us, if we approve the contract, that if we see ESSER funds not going to be continued or so on, that we don't get an extension? Is it possible after the 3 years that we would have the ability to get out of the contract with proper notice?
Yes. Okay. Yes. I believe that's how I read the contract.
We'd have to give 90 days written notice, and that notice can't come prior to the second anniversary. And that would be without cause.
So keeping close eye on that and having that well documented within the business, team, finance, what that team would be important, just because we could run out of ESSER funds.
Mhm.
And we could have diminished need, right? Over time, knock on wood, maybe we would need it less, and that would not be a service that we would find our employees were, so in need of. I too share concerns about the incongruency in the contract and the only saving. We do have an exit, and so do they. I mean, I think we have to remember, if this isn't working for them, they have an exit too. So, we have to, be able to pivot, because at any point in time, within the parameters of the contract, UW is, going through its own set of changes and, acquisition and all those things. That, there's a chance that they could, pivot as well. It's not just us.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Mayville,
Aye.
Mrs. Hauk, Mr. Zickert,
Aye.
Mr. Herrera, Mrs. Whitcomb,
Aye.
Mr. Booker, Mrs. Reed Nemick.
No. Motion passes 6-1. Next, do I have a motion regarding the finance department restructuring?
I make a motion to approve the finance department restructuring as detailed in the agenda.
Member Mayville made a motion to approve the finance department restructuring as indicated in the agenda, and Member Herrera seconded the motion. Discussion?
Yeah, I'll just say really quick is that I would have preferred to have done this after we have a new CFO on board, but I will trust that the new CFO will be heavily involved in the restructuring, and that person's opinion will be weighed in how we move forward with it, one way or the other, and when it comes to filling the positions.
We're preparing to extend an offer to someone new, and I believe that they should be able to lead the department in any level of restructuring. What positions they felt were appropriate. Obviously, there will be a team of people who would be involved in the hiring. My vote tonight would be no on this particular item, because I believe that the new individual that we're going to approve in 2 days, and that's going to come to the district in 10 or 11, should direct the decisions as to what positions are created or not. But it has nothing whatsoever to do with not supporting the people who are currently in that team, both those that are transitioning out and those that are still here.
In regards to the job descriptions as presented, both job descriptions indicate a supervision of individuals under them. And in November, we approved a job description for a new incoming CFO that was their duty. So I don't know if that no longer becomes the CFO's duty and would move as well regarding salaries. not exactly sure what we're being asked to approve salary wise there. And I would echo what Mrs. Whitcomb said in regards to discussing and getting ready to approve a CFO hiring within 2 days. I feel that it doesn't put a lot of faith in the person that we have hired to come in and be our CFO to say, hey, this is your department. You tell us how it should be.
It's my understanding, based on representations from the administration, that this just gives the CFO the opportunity to create these positions, and that that Dr. Weisman plans to take into account that person's training experience, desires when it comes to structuring the finance department. So I think in order to give that person as much flexibility as possible and to be able to implement changes quickly and without waiting for another board meeting, this is actually a way in which the board can support that person's ability to come in, quickly make whatever changes he or she deems necessary for the department, and try to keep more employees from fleeing that department. So I actually see this as trusting that person with the flexibility of being able to act quickly and decisively. This isn't the board telling the new CFO, hey, you have to create these positions. This is the board telling the CFO, hey, if you want to create these positions, you can do that day one. So I will be voting yes on this tonight.
I would just echo what Mabel just mentioned as well. It does create some flexibility on day one for the CFO to come in and either continue on with these job descriptions, these roles, or pivot and come to something else. I think this person has the flexibility to do that in this capacity. I don't think we limit that. I think we bring some options that are available, whether this person wants to execute on those or not. So I will be supporting this.
Anyone else? Roll call, please.
Ms. Mayville,
Aye.
Mr. Herrera,
Aye.
Mr. Booker,
No.
Mrs. Hauk,
Aye.
Mr. Zickert,
Aye.
Mrs. Whitcomb,
No,
Mrs. Reed Nemick.
No. Motion passes 4-3. Moving on, we have revisions to existing Board of Education policies. These policies have previously gone through both the policy committee and first reading with the board last month. Are there any policies on the roll call agenda any members of the board would like to take out for separate consideration? Hearing none, do I have a motion regarding roll call items 8 through 54 policies?
I would make a motion. I'm gonna fumble through this. I'm gonna learn to do it. I make a motion that we accept the policies as presented, revised and presented in agenda items 8 through 54.
Member Whitcomb made a motion to accept roll call items 8 through 54 policies as presented. And Member Booker seconded the motion. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Whitcomb,
Aye.
Mr. Booker,
Aye.
Mr. Zickert,
Aye.
Ms. Mayville,
Aye.
Mrs. Hauk, Mr. Herrera,
Aye.
Mrs. Reed Nemick.
Aye. Motion passes 7-0. And do I have a motion regarding the superintendent's resignation?
Gotta move.
I make a motion to approve the superintendent's resignation.
Thank you, Matt.
Member Zickert made the motion to approve the superintendent's resignation and member Bucher seconded the motion to approve the superintendent's resignation effective June 30th of 2022. Is that correct? Or July?
July
Hey,
1st.
July 1st.
July.
1st.
Okay, member Zickert made a motion to approve the superintendent's resignation and member Bucher seconded the motion to approve the superintendent's resignation effective July 1 of 2022. Discussion?
I would like to say that I'm grateful to the Belvedere community for letting me be part of the community here for it'll be 6 years here this spring. My heart has been here for 6 years and I'm continuously inspired by all of the great people that work for the district to make it a great place, teachers and otherwise. We got a lot of people here that make it a really good school district. So thank you for letting me be part of that.
I'd like to thank Dr. Weisman. I know the time will come when he has his last meeting and we can more effusively thank him for his years here. I hope that he moves on to a board who respects, appreciates, and listens to his recommendations and doesn't scold him for buying his staff pizza. And I hope that this board has learned from this particular experience going forward.
Dr. Weisman, thank you for the service that you've given. I remember the very first time that I met you. I remember the socks. You always have very interesting socks, and it was a great conversation starter. But regardless of the socks, I also appreciate the work that you have done, as well as appreciate the respect that you gave regarding your resignation and giving us time to get a search together and get somebody into the position prior to your exit. Discussion.
Yeah, we'll just say very quickly, it was nice to be in on the very first part of this one. Our BHS Christmas party intertwined with the board meeting, interviewed the final candidates, and it just happened to see who they were at the time, back in the day.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Zickert,
Aye.
Mr. Bucher, Mr. Herrera,
Aye.
Ms. Mayville,
Aye.
Mrs. Hauk, Mrs. Whitcomb,
Aye.
Mrs. Reed Nemec.
Aye. Motion passes 7-0. Next, move on to board discussion. Following items have been brought up for board discussion this month. We'll start with unprofessional emails received by the Board of Education. I'll start with this. Dr. Weisman and I had a discussion in regards to what do we do in general if we receive emails that may not have appropriate language, that may not be something that is asking for information or asking us to respond. And he and I spoke about it, and there are a couple of board policies. Policy 830 is the main policy in regards to email correspondence with the board. Excuse me, no, that is policy 230. 830 is in regards to if something happens that is inappropriate while someone is visiting school property, what the procedure is for that. And also the attorney gave some input as well. There are some options that the board would have to possibly reroute emails to a central location and have them screened. And that screening process would watch for any requests for student records, FOIA requests that might be made, as well as a request that might be made specific to a school or a teacher that would have to be looked at, referred. Regarding that, the board could also choose not to do anything at this time. And if we receive emails, to do what we do with our emails, whether we put them in our own folder, whether we read them and delete them, that is an option as well.
Well, I know I've only had one problematic emailer in my entire time on the board. Y'all are getting the same emails. He's a frequent flyer. He has never offered anything of substance. It's the forwarding of emails or the forwarding of links to news articles with inflammatory subject lines. I can't tell if they're directed to us or not. I don't know what this guy's problem is, but nobody has the constitutional right to contact the board by email. It is a privilege. It's not a right. And I'm tired of seeing his crap show up in my inbox. My understanding is there's a problem directing it internally with IT. There's a problem funneling his emails to spam, because that means that all communications from the district are somehow impacted. I don't understand the technology side of it. I don't care. Frankly, people don't have the right to be contacted by the district through email. So probably my preference would be to give this guy one final warning. And then his emails will be routed elsewhere. And maybe that means he doesn't get communications from the district through email. But I'm tired of him. I'm tired of his emails. His publicly available criminal history is concerning to me. I don't want him contacting me anymore.
Do you have any comments?
I was unaware of criminal history. I guess when I look at this, I get the emails. I haven't read 99% of them. I've read like 2. Sorry. I've only read like 2. I believe that when they contain profanity or anything like that, it immediately gets it's deleted. Like I said, I haven't really read them. But my worry is from my understanding, this is a parent in the district, and they don't have a right to contact the board via email. I don't know. And can we individually like block it? I don't know. I just file it in a file, But what actions can we or can't we do? I guess that's my question.
Basically at this point, we could reroute to a central location and have that screened, or we could continue on as it is, and each board member could determine what to do with the email that is received.
Saying every email would be screened then that comes through, not just this gentleman's.
Email that's rerouted due to unprofessionalism in regards to that. So no, not every email would be rerouted. It would be emails that are deemed unprofessional, or vulgar, or inappropriate language.
I mean, the emails are disgusting that he sends. I mean, there's nasty language in it, and I'm quite sick of it myself. I also do worry. Some of the ones he sends us are people going at board meetings and attacking so-called board members. So I do worry. I mean, we don't have an SRO officer here tonight, and the world's a crazy place sometimes. So I'm glad we're having this conversation, because I think it's a problem. And with the emails that we're getting, I'm not comfortable that people wouldn't come here and God knows what, so. Whatever we need to do. I don't want to hear from him anymore, so.
Yeah, I mean, I am not fond of the emails either, to say the least. Most of them, or all of them, are very unprofessional, to say the least. I am concerned that I think having dealt with things in the law that I don't like, but still have to live with, I'm worried that we'd have to give this gentleman due process if we do something like that. We'd have to have some sort of hearing or things like that, and I'm not sure that's always in the best interest of us either. So I guess I'd probably, if we're going to do something different, I'd like advice from the board attorney on what we can do and what we should do. If there's anything we can and should do to do that, just so we don't act and then regret it later. I mean, I'd just take his advice. Like I said, I don't enjoy those emails any more than anybody else does.
In regards to the board attorney, which there was a conversation he and I followed up with today, he does not recommend blocking because blocking could possibly get us into a First Amendment issue. Rerouting can be an option, rerouting to a central location and having those screened very frequently, weekly, bi-weekly, and looking for, again, student record information requests, FOIA requests, and any type of requests that are specific to a school or a teacher. And in regards to keeping anyone, off the premises, that is outlined in policy 830, and that does require a hearing before we as a board can say you can't come on the premises. Provided, the only time that we can say you can't come on the premises is if it's illegal for them to be here to begin with. Like they are a registered sex offender or an expelled student that has already been indicated that they can't be on premises.
I don't want to.
Am I understanding it would be all the emails or just an identified individual?
At this point, it can be an identified
Okay,
individual that
okay.
has been identified
Yeah,
as
okay.
already having a pattern of unprofessional emails.
Yeah, okay. So a single individual or, God forbid we had someone in the future for whom it occurred again, in isolation per individual, that individual's emails. Now, again, nothing precludes them from just opening up another email. And, then, we're playing whack-a-mole, right? Trying to, I don't know, but I would be a proponent of following whatever guidance was appropriate, from our board attorney and maybe, I don't know, if we had the opportunity, to speak reason and that individual would follow that and be, told, look, just don't do this
Yeah, he
anymore,
hung up on Dan.
then, great.
Mhm.
But precluding that being a viable option, then, as we just, I would say, take the action as described and outlined in the order and fashion as outlined by our attorney, so that we're sure to, and if are we looking at that right now? It looks like we're just talking about emails. We're not talking about barring this individual or any other from the buildings. Is that correct? We're not having that conversation.
That was the initial conversation that I had with our human resources department, was requiring the individual to get prior permission to come on to district property.
So in order for that to occur, we're saying there would have to be a hearing. Can we do one without the other? Can we reroute emails without also, I'm not saying which we should do. I'm saying,
Yes.
can we do?
Yeah, we could do one or the other.
Just because we're then directed by the attorney that the proper way to do that would be to follow our policy, which would be a hearing.
Yeah.
Prior to, okay.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the policy, so I'll have to review that. We have done that we have done that with adults in the past, is told them that if they're going to come on property, they need to let us know prior. Unless it's to pick up their child, and they can stay in the car and pick up their child. So we've worked through that. I'll have to look at that policy to see if what we're doing is aligned with that.
I guess if a staff member is gonna have to sit and sift through his emails, that kind of defeats the purpose for me. So I guess if there's nothing, if we can't just push a button and he doesn't get through to me anymore, I guess I'm not a delicate flower. If a staff member's got to read it, I guess I might as well read it and delete it. It doesn't.
So
For whatever
if
reason,
you
it then affects his other email.
You can't put a
access.
block on like an individual, like you can't put a block on like me from getting email or
Like
from
he might be
Mrs.
able to email
Mayville.
his kid's teacher, I
Right.
think, you know.
One block would be a block over everybody versus just a specific.
He is.
He hung up on me last time I tried to talk to him last week.
I mean, I've responded back to him. What do you want from us? Who are you? What do you want from us? And he has absolutely zero interest in having any conversation about anything.
So Tyler Bell did show me how it's not the easiest way that you normally would block somebody in your personal email by just hitting that spam button. Because if you do that as individual board members, you won't get anything that is sent to BOE. But I do know how, as individuals, if you would like, I could sit down with you just real quick. Tyler did show me how to set up individual, kind of a roundabout way. It's not super simple, but we could do that. It'll take about 3 minutes if individual board members want to do that.
I think that's fine, and I'm okay just having the conversation on record. I think that's what I wanted, to make sure that we had the conversation, everyone's aware of things. That's all I really needed. So I'm okay with what Dr. Wiesman just suggested.
Okay, so if anyone would like to see Dr. Wiesman or meeting this
Stop
evening,
on by. Yeah.
Next is board protocols. Again, this is something that I talked to Dr. Wiesman about in regards to board protocols. Board protocols were approved in July and then amended and reapproved back in September. And this is something that some of the protocols that we have, primarily who board members can talk to, may become a little difficult in regards to the transition of Dr. Wiesman's transition as he transitions to his next job, in regards to possible bargaining, and in regards to things that will extend beyond Dr. Wiesman's time here. This is just discussion this evening, just to discuss, is this something that we need to pursue? Board protocols okay? Or is this something, that we need to amend moving forward?
So I know I sent you an email this month. What is, I want to make sure I say this right. Are there consequences to not following the board protocol? Because I do think there have been instances where we're not following it. And I just want to make sure that if we have these out there and the community knows we're supposed to be following them, that means something. It's meaningful. We made these words, we approve the words, and we're going to follow them. So you talk about changing them, whatever the majority wants, that's fine. But what are the consequences if we don't follow these, if any? So is there a purpose to this? Is it meaningful, or is it just kind of fluff? We're going to follow this, hey guys, we really are doing this, but there's no consequences to not following it. I guess that's my question.
Aren't part of board policy. This is additional items that as a board came up with in June and presented, said, yep, this is what we're gonna work by or work with as we do our board work. In regards to specific consequences, there's not a specific consequence in regards to not following outside of maybe not being happy with yourself for not doing it. Board policy is slightly different, but even board policy, there are specific policies that are governed by state law and state regulations. But even policies typically are a verbal warning, a written warning, those types of things.
I just want to make sure that we're doing the right thing. I mean, we're being honorable with what we're showing the community that we're supposed to follow. So that's all. I mean, if I'm putting my name to this, I'm going to follow it. So I just wanted to see if there were, if it really did. Did you check on policy with any? Never mind. We'll get into it later. It's no big deal.
I mean, I do think there's a board policy that covers this. Board members' questions or communications to staff or about programs will be channeled through the superintendent's office. It's policy 2140. I agree that there's no, there's no penalty for not following board protocol. And frankly, there's no penalty for not following this policy. I think it's silly to have something that we're not going to follow. So if the board wants to change this part of board protocol, they should probably amend the board policy as well.
Other discussion? Okay. And District 100 solar proposal.
This was something that Business Services Committee reviewed this last month. And so I think they were just looking to see if there was any board comments or thoughts moving forward with it.
So in the long run, I was at that meeting at the Business Services. I would need to remove my mask, bring the mic close for everybody. So I was at that meeting where this was presented and discussed as well. There are potential savings, but that comes at a 20-year 20-year increment. But it's $1 million saving. But again, it's 20 years. So there is some legitimacy to this. However, you know, my own opinion is probably if we wanted to explore something like this, we would want to slow walk this and make sure that we've got the right individuals, such as a new CFO, in place to be able to research this further, explore this, speak with other districts who are doing this, and also make sure that it makes sense for us. You know, there's probably some questions in terms of, and I think maybe one of the questions was answered in terms of if they put some of the solar on our roofs, which was a recommendation for the use of our space. What happens, you know, 5 years into this and we need to replace a roof, you know, whose cost is that, right? And my understanding, it would be our cost to take it down and put it back up in terms of the installation. So there would be some outside cost for us if we were to look at this. But again, there's potential savings. But again, my own opinion is that, you know, I'd rather see us slow walk this, research this a little bit more, talk to other districts, make sure our CFO, our facilities people are on board and have researched this and looked into this as well. But yeah, that's my 2 cents on it.
Yeah, that was the consensus of the committee pretty much too. So, and I think, I don't know if I put it in the notes, but they mentioned that Huntley was one that's going through it. So that might be a good avenue to see how they're doing with it.
And I wasn't there to get all the details, but one of the things that came to my mind is to your point, because I heard that that's what happens is we're responsible if they have to be moved or if there's a roof problem. What happens if we get in a dispute where the roof problem come, you know, that come from the solar people, that come from you. And to me, the per year savings, and I don't remember the dollar amount, it wasn't huge. You get into one litigious thing that could just completely destroy, the advantage of this. And that would be my big concern, is to really know how that would all be handled.
And I would say in regards to, solar's been around for a while, but there's always improvements being made. And, 20-year-old solar panels, how cost effective are they going to be? If a solar panel comes along that is of a better quality in 2-3 years, do we have to pay to upgrade to that? Or is that included in the contract that they upgrade and pay? And then the other part would just be the bid process, how the bid process applies to this. And at this point, I think we've got a lot on our plate in the next 6 months. So, well, I wouldn't say no. I think our energies probably are better spent in the next 6 months in regards to some of the things that we've already talked about this evening. So, yeah, I would say a definite, very, very slow roll if we pursue this. But is the intention then to go back to the Business Services Committee?
I think that it was getting the consensus of the board and then going back and letting them know what our thoughts were.
So I would say doing something right now immediately is not something that I'm interested in right now. Maybe in the next 6 months that could change. Vicar, do you have any comments? Your thoughts?
No, I just think that technology is going to change a lot in the next few years, and I'd rather be on the beginning of the new stuff than be on the end of the old stuff. I think you're going to see in 10 years, there'll be a lot of transitioning. At least we think that may happen. And I'd hate to get locked into something we start now that will be not as effective or maybe more cost efficient down the road when it's not a huge issue for us right now anyway. We have some older buildings, like, not that the roofs are terrible, I'm not trying to insinuate that, but you take a place like BHS, it would be a big place to put a lot of them. I would want to do it when I knew the roofs were going to last for a while, than do it if I knew we were going to have to replace them 5 years from now or 6 years from now or whatever.
Come. Herrera and Mr. Booker. Anything else to add? Mrs. Mayville? Okay, and Mrs. Hauk. Okay. Moving on, strategic planning. This is something that has been discussed just very basically in the fall as to whether or not the strategic plan was something, since it was turning 5 years old in February, if this is something that the board wanted to look at refreshing, redoing. Dr. Wiesman and I discussed the strategic planning and thought that it needed to come to the board. I'll give you my feeling before I ask for any additional discussion is, again, we have a lot on our plate, and as well, the next superintendent would be an integral process or an integral part of the strategic plan itself. So personally, I would say let's pause that and come back to it possibly to discuss in about 6 months. Anyone else have any discussion? Okay, with putting a pin in it, bringing it back in a little bit. All right, next, food service contract.
This is mostly probably for me. We did ask for a renewal proposal with Organic Life. And so if there's any questions that you have about Organic Life that you'd like us to look into and bring back to the board, or details that I can help with before we bring a proposal for that, now would be a great time to start that conversation. Organic Life has been a great partner. They're kind of in the same situation as Kelly, where we brought them on board and we're in the pandemic, and but they've been great pivoting, and I'm getting to know them a lot better over the last month now that Greg's gone. So most likely we'll recommend that you at least take a look at the renewal proposal that they provide to us here in the next 30 to 60 days. I assume we'll get that. And then we'll funnel that through business services.
How long a contract are we looking at? Will they have any
I
indication
think
of that?
I think I'm only allowed to do 1-year renewals with them at a
Thank
time.
you.
I don't know, some people were involved in that initial. Is it just 1 year before I came in?
I believe that you can do 3 years
Initially?
initially, and then you can do 1-year renewals up to 5 or 6 years,
Got it.
but I don't recall.
Oh, is it my understanding right now that that's all covered by the state? It's going to continue to be? Is that right?
There is a chance of that. So right now, the community lunch provision, which allows all of our students to get a free breakfast and a free lunch regardless of home status or family income status. There is continued conversation, thanks, Mr. Bucher, at the federal level of continuing that programming at least for another year and possibly in perpetuity, because of the number of kids that are eating is just significantly increased. So that's a possibility that food service as we know it will just change moving forward. Great point.
Okay, so we'll look for this from the Business Services Committee in the next few months. Next is grading and promotion next steps.
I think Doctors Carson and Johnson we're ready to talk some more, just to continue the conversation from last month, if that's okay with the board.
All right, so Dr. Johnson, I just wanted to thank you for the opportunity to meet with many of you for a second time, some of you for a first time, to get your feedback. We really appreciate the chance to spend that time understanding your concerns and the concerns that have been shared with you. As I explained in some of our meetings, summer may feel like a really long time away in the middle of January. It's tough to imagine summer, but it'll be here really quick from a planning perspective. And so just to reiterate the importance of us having some clarity about where we're heading with our grading system, and to be able to provide that to our staff sooner than later. I know they're anxious to know where we're heading. And so we put together an updated document that we had shared with you back in December, added on the comments that were new or that were clarified as a result of our conversation. And that's what we submitted as part of the agenda. And really just wanted to understand if there were anything that you feel was misrepresented or anything that is missing. There are some action steps, next steps that Dr. Johnson and I are planning to take that I'll go over in a brief second here, but just wanted to make sure in terms of the content of your feedback about the grading system, if there were any, again, misrepresentations from your perspective or something that might be missing that's really important to make sure we capture.
I would say in regards to the grading philosophies, and I have provided these comments and thoughts to Dr. Carson and Dr. Johnson. In regards to the grading and philosophies, there are a few items in regards to the overall description for the grading philosophy. And those primarily with bullet number 3. As well as in bullet number 4. And in bullet number 6, I'm in agreement with that. Stopping after the word parents in that. So bullet number 3 is regarding the multiple opportunities, which you had indicated in your update, and grades reflecting the most recent information on a student at that time. I feel that students can benefit from the highest level that would represent mastery in regards to that. They could get a 3, and a 2, and the 2 would be their most recent, and that's what they would possibly end up with And as well as a 1, a 2, a 2, and a 3. If they, they would receive 3 as mastery, but they've only done it one time. So have they reached? So those are my thoughts regarding the grading philosophies in the areas that are my thoughts. In regards to the document that is listed on board docs this evening, it had just indicated grading philosophy supported. If this is added, and also information regarding the blue indication, practices for reassessment, grading system reliable and accessible, clarification of reassessment practices. Those were things that were indicated areas of improvement among a majority of the board members. So
I guess I'm just saying.
So thoughts on a special meeting or special meetings or meeting? Yes?
I'm fine with it. I think it has a lot of ripple effects too, because then I think you look at, based on what we do with that, what kind of platform are we going to use? And I think it just, there's a lot of subsidiary issues that go along with the main issues that need to be resolved before teachers get too far toward the end of the year where they're like, I got to get ready for next year, and I'm not ready to get ready for next year, so to speak, because I need to know what we're going to do one way or the other.
We maybe lose staff because we don't have a good plan. So, yeah, they need to know what they're doing.
Okay, so I've asked Recording Secretary Mrs. Ashens to send an email tomorrow polling for special meetings over the next couple of weeks and into the beginning of February. Okay, next is the superintendent search proposals. There are 5 proposals that were attached. In regards to where the proposals came from, BWP and Associates. BWP helped do the search when we found Dr. Weistman. Educational Leadership Solutions was a recommendation that is a fairly new company. They are a couple years into their corporation or LLC. But have been doing some local searches. Hazard Young, Atea and Associates, I do believe that, please correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that HYA did the search that brought Dr. Hauslog, I believe. Illinois Association of School Boards, that is the organization that we belong to as a school board. They have a separate division that does school board searches, or excuse me, executive searches for superintendents as well as administrators. And School Exec Connect is another team that has been around a little bit longer than the EDLS. And for the most part, if you looked through the proposals, many of the proposals do much of the same thing. They gather information from the board. They compile that information. Some include a survey of the community. Some include an add-on for survey of the community. They all indicate, they all send proposals or job offerings out, and people can also come to their websites. Mr. Zickert, could I ask you to weigh in on this just for a second? So the different proposal teams, if someone were searching for a superintendent seat position, and the reason why I'm asking Mr. Zickert is because he has a superintendent certificate and has applied for superintendency positions in the past. Is there a specific place that you would go or one would go to look for a superintendent opening?
I think a lot of times it's a regional thing. It's not always a regional thing, but sometimes it is. The Illinois School Board Association probably sends out the most. They have a general listserv that I still get 1 or 2. I mean, I just got 3 new ones today that they're coming up. I know I just kidded with Dr. Weistman a little bit. I saw the Warren one come up before he applied for it, among other ones. They did the Illinois Association of School Boards. Some of the ones like Hazard Young and Atea in the past, they'll have people that they have identified that I don't think they're in their company or anything like that, but they know of. They have a pool of people they look for. Some do that. But I think a lot of it depends on the regional area. Suburban Chicago uses different ones than Central Illinois does in large part. So I think we're in kind of an area where we're kind of open to a few of them because we're close enough to the suburbs they would do it, but we're not Chicago either. We're not the the New Triers or the Prairie View Stevensons either. So, I think they're all good. I mean, they're all about the same price for the most part. I just think as a wide scatter shot, Illinois Association of School Boards probably covers a bigger part of the state and does them, but I don't know if that means they're any better. They carry most of the districts around here necessarily. I just think they do a broader statewide thing.
That's the question. Are we looking for one, multiple? How many firms are we?
No, one firm.
Just one?
One
Just
firm would do the entire search.
Okay.
So,
That's
you
my
know, when
first
looking
question.
at the proposal to choose, and we're not doing this evening, this is just initial discussion. We're having a special meeting on Thursday to actually decide on one. The other option would be, there are 5. I have sent an email to all 5 and said that this was on for discussion at our board meeting this evening. And there is the possibility that anywhere between 1 and 5 proposal teams would be invited to give a 10-minute presentation at Thursday's meeting and answer questions. And they could give that via Zoom, or they could attend in person. All 5 of them responded and said, thank you for the information. And if we're asked to be available, we'll try to be available. So direction tonight is, do we want to take a direction of having all 5 and have presentations from all 5, or do we want to try to narrow it down to 2 or 3 and go from there, so we have 2 or 3 on Thursday?
Well, this is my 2 cents, because all of them seem to fall in line and they cost about the same. I didn't see a lot of differentiation between some of them. Some of them kind of similar, some not so much, but I don't know. If we're going to give them 10-minute opportunities to speak with us, I really want to hear kind of what's different between them. You know, what's different between BWP and Hazard Young, you know, and those folks. I really want to see what the differentiation is between their searches, what they're going to do unique to our search, what the other firms aren't going to do. Now, there's a lot of language that says they are going to do the same thing, and they're doing a survey, and they're going to bring in some stakeholders and do this and that. But I see it in almost all the proposals. So what's the difference? What are we getting for our bang, for our money? What's the value that we're going to get above and beyond that they haven't already mentioned before? So
just to clarify, so you would like to see a presentation from each of them, or
as many as we can, so I can,
Okay.
so we can assess which, okay, you know, and I know that sounds long, but if we limit it to 10 each presentation, you know,
Okay.
we can cover a lot of ground, but that's my opinion. I don't know.
Thank you.
I'm fine with whatever is decided by consensus. It's perfectly fine. I would probably fall more in the proponency of narrowing it down a little bit tonight and being able to have a little bit more meaty conversation with those that we felt were maybe the front runner. I don't know how much we would glean in 10 minutes and even 5 minutes of follow-up, but whatever is decided is I'm fine with. I just probably would like to narrow the field a little for Thursday.
I think it's really important to spend a lot of time to make sure we get the right firm. Not that there's one maybe necessarily better than the other, but I think we need to do due diligence on that, because they're going to vet the candidates. And my guess is, out of these 5 candidates, if we each told them to give us the top 8, we might not see the top 8 in every group. The top 8 may be different in every group. So I think it's important that we get a group we're comfortable with, because they're the ones that are going to bring the ones we're going to look at. There may be 40 people apply each time for each group, and we're not going to see 40. We're going to see a lot smaller number.
I think I'd like to see them all too. I know when we did this previously, when I looked and, you know, read through everything, when they came, I had a different feeling, and it wouldn't have been the one that I chose on paper. So I agree. I think it'd be good to hear from all of them.
I agree. I'd pick one. I thought we had to pick one, but that may not be what I think after I hear them. So.
I wanted to chime in. I'm not going to be here on Thursday. I've got a work meeting that night. I told Ms. Reed-Nemick to schedule the first available night for the special meeting. If that meant I couldn't be here, that was fine. I trust you guys to pick one. So I just wanted to throw that out there, that I won't be here, but I'm sure you guys will do a good job picking, and I apparently have completely blocked the process of choosing who we used last time. I don't remember any of it. I think I was happy with BWP, but that doesn't mean we have to go with them again. Yeah.
So I don't think probably anyone is going to do any worse than any other one, but I would agree with Mrs. Hauk that last time when we reviewed the proposals on paper and then actually saw them in person, and I believe we had HYA, BWP, and IASB give presentations. And the one that looked the best on paper didn't present the best. And, you know, these are people that we're going to be working very intimately with for, you know, the next 2-3 months. So I think that it's important to feel that connection, and hopefully if they appear in person, we'll get that, or we would get that sense via Zoom if that's how they can participate. But what I'm hearing is that we would request that all 5 of them attend if they can. If they can't, you know, if they might want to do a video presentation or something like that, so they can at least, you know, participate if they can't be here or can't be available on Zoom. Is
But
that
we are
correct?
saying I mean, obviously I understand something could come up, but our intention is to make a decision on Thursday night, select the firm. So if for some reason they were not able to participate, we would extend the invitation to all 5. You know, that's the line, right? In this, I mean, we wouldn't be, okay. I mean, because need to get started.
Ultimately, this is something that we need to get started. And that was primarily the request for whether or not we wanted to do a special meeting or do it this evening and ask all 5 of them to be here this evening. So, you know, this discussion is in regards to how many do we want to see and how do we want to have it, you know, available to us on Thursday? Do we want to narrow it tonight, or do we just want to see all 5 and be able to come to consensus on Thursday?
I think if we did do it on Thursday, and let's just say all 5 want to come for the sake of argument, we give them a general time frame, because I'm not sure ISAB wants to listen to Hazard, Young, and Atea, or want to listen to BWP, wants to listen to, I mean, I think it doesn't have to be specific, but I think just they're not going to want to listen to the other one either way.
Is there any other discussion regarding the superintendent search proposals?
I think the one that brings the best dinner is probably the one that we would go with. Yes, is that a general consensus? Yeah. Okay.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to turn the meeting over to Dr. Weisman for administrative reports. Oh, sorry. Do we have upcoming?
Yeah.
Hold on.
No, that's fair. So usually around, if we're going to make boundary changes, recommendations for next year, we try to make them by right now. We aren't planning on making those right now. But of note is we do have a facility and long range planning committee meeting coming up later this month. Yeah, otherwise just the regularly scheduled reports are in that attachment. And then go ahead and administrative reports. Let's see. So just to call out the elephant in the room, we've had quite the shift in COVID-19 impact here over the last 4 to 6 weeks. We have seen a significant uptick internally here with students that are required to quarantine because of a significant community spread increase. We've also seen a significant increase in number of staff that are required to stay home, either because they themselves are under some type of quarantine or isolation order, or they may need to stay home with their children who are on some type of quarantine or isolation order, or otherwise are not able to attend school or daycare because the school or the daycare has been closed down. There was a significant change here in the last couple of weeks with the state requirements on quarantine. The new quarantine and isolation requirements are very much more simplified. It's generally what we call 5+5. So in most situations that a student or family might find themselves in, positive case, close contact, or symptoms, in most cases, the students are just staying home for 5 days. And then when they come back, they have strict masking requirements for the next 5 days, hence the 5+5. But it does allow them to get back into the school quicker. Also allows our staff that have to stay home to take care of their children to be back quicker. And that's really cut in half the number of students on any given day that are in quarantine. So that's positive. I do have here in the return, item number 2 is return to school plan changes and updates. There haven't really been any specific changes to our COVID response return to school plan, but I did list the new guidelines for employees and students. Generally that 5+5, but more specifically, they are included there under item number 2. We had paused on staff, providing staff internal testing opportunities in December. We do still have a significant number of staff that have to test, are required to test weekly because they have not been fully vaccinated. And we told staff at the beginning of the year, hey, make sure you've got a backup plan because at any time supply chain issues may arise. And we got into that spot in December and began prioritizing the tests that we did have, the rapid tests that we did have for student use. We are planning on restarting that internal testing up again here. So staff have an opportunity to be tested on site at the district in their school in most situations. We have found an external provider, Midwest Coordination Center, MCC, and they have a testing program. The sign-up process for their program is a little bit different than the last round that we did with Shield. Instead of us uploading a roster of interested of all candidates and then toggling on or off whether a student or staff is interested in the system, individual staff members or students can turn in an interest sheet. Then each individual account is created from the interest sheet. And then an email is sent to that individual to log in and confirm the account status. And once that's happened, then they can begin testing. So it's kind of a 2-step process. Their process does give us the option to upload a roster of everybody and then having people log in to know interest. We're doing it the other way around just because there's so many concerns and questions in the community about a general roster upload. So there's not going to be a roster upload for staff or students. We are beginning that with staff. We invited them all to fill out their interest forms this week. And then we'll begin that process with them next week for those that get their interest forms in this week. And then as long as that goes well, we'll begin students if the board's comfortable with that process. The week or 2 weeks after we start with staff. If we have a district-wide testing and screening process, that does allow us to utilize the test to stay program, which would mean generally that if a student is considered a close contact, they don't need to quarantine if they're willing to be tested on day 1, 3, and 5. The regular screening helps with some of that. You have to have a regular screening program in place to be able to utilize test to stay. The tests for days 1, 3, or 5 don't have to be from that single provider. They can be with the rapid nasal swabs that we have internally for use as well. But once we can get that screening program up and running, then we'll be able to start a test to stay protocol internally. So we can talk more about COVID. Really the only other thing I had on here that we haven't touched on formally directly was our CFO transition. We are now in month 2. It's been about a little over 30 days, but in the middle of the second month in a transition process for that senior leader. It's a big position here in the community and are looking forward to hopefully being able to bring in somebody here this Thursday. We went through a couple interview rounds, interviewed some really, really impressive candidates. And I think we're coming away hopefully here with a really good candidate that we can all be excited about. So looking forward to bringing a new person on, hopefully on Thursday. Let's see, before I move on to ESSER conversations, did anybody have any questions about any of our COVID response, return to school plan changes, or the testing and screening program I described?
In regards to the close contact and what students need to be excluded or quarantined, I guess would be the other word. Has there been any indication as to what a fully vaccinated 12+ individual is and not a fully vaccinated 18+ individual?
Yeah, great question. So children 12 to 17 have to be fully vaccinated. We don't take boosters into consideration with students 12 to 17. But I believe with the students, once they turn 18, then the boosters start coming into play. I think that's what you're asking for, right?
Other item was the public health department came in December and was doing some walkthroughs. Were there anything, was there anything that we had to update or that they recommended we update to try to stay ahead of this?
They did provide us with some recommendations. I don't have those with me offhand, but I can provide those to the board. There are onesies, twosies here or there at the different school buildings. Most of them had to do with just ways that you can increase the distance between students and in a classroom or in the hallway. All right. We've got, we did include academic reports for the end of the trimester for our elementary schools, and we'll have end of term similar reports for the middle schools and the high schools, hopefully next month. We would have had the elementary school ones last month, but eSchool was down with some complications that week and we couldn't run all the reports we needed. We've also included some map testing results. I did just want to walk through to give the board kind of an overview of where we're at with some of our ESSER strategies. So just maybe take about 2 or 3 minutes and talk through this. We weren't able to fill any additional intervention staff at the elementary schools, but we are planning on posting those during the next regular season, hiring season here this spring. The initial intent was to increase the amount of intervention support we gave to students, but to be honest, our interventionists at the elementary schools are being pulled so much to do internal subbing that overall we're probably providing less direct intervention support. We do have a real specific curriculum tool, Success Maker, that is supporting some individual student needs, and we've got some job embedded support provided with that. The additional stipends for high school, middle school teachers to support school academic recovery and intervention needs is really something that we're getting ready to focus on during second semester. We had a strategy to identify and hire additional counselors for middle school and high schools to support different types of credit recovery opportunities. We posted that, have not been able to fill it, and are going to repost that, take that down and then repost it for the regular hiring season. We have tried to hire additional permanent substitute teachers. Some of those we've been able to fill. They're very busy, the ones that we do hire, but we have not been able to hire a good chunk of those. We were able to hire a bilingual family liaison that started in November, and that individual during the month of December worked a lot on community outreach to better understand community organizations and needs. And has some parent meetings and college fairs coming up to support our students. I think that's a big win. We had started planning, we got into the fall and the winter and started planning some additional after-school events, clubs, and activities that the students could start to be part of here during the winter months. And then we had kind of the uptick in Omicron, and we're starting to see some staff fatigue. So we haven't been able to make progress on that. Let's see, we do have after-school tutoring, support, and credit recovery opportunities. We, in some places, we've been able, we had proposed that, started the year, and then had planned on expanding that throughout the year. We've been able to expand that a little bit, but not as much as we wanted to. We've had difficulty hiring staff, keeping staff on board, and we've had difficulty with transportation because transportation staffing has been difficult, and filling the extra routes hasn't been possible. We should be able to continue the after school options that we've got, at least for the next few months, but staffing continues to be a struggle there. We are planning on summer school. We started the year with permanent tutors that would meet with quarantine students, and then went through improvement cycle for that after some board feedback. But we are implementing the remote learning for the elementary school students and have funds allocated towards that still. We did, after looking at a couple different contracts, the board did approve an online tutoring contract, and we are finalizing communication with them this upcoming week. So that can go live here before February hits. We're not pursuing the contract with the Boone County Health Department for community health resource support, but we are moving forward with the Care Solace contract for mental health resources. And the part-time social worker for staff was on the agenda tonight, and we're not pursuing the research regarding early childhood, efficacy of interventions, district programs, and an equity audit. So it's probably beneficial in the coming months to talk as a board about priorities for ESSER funding, because we are having difficulty with executing on many of the strategies. A lot of that comes down to staffing. We have continued staffing struggles. I think we're pretty lucky to be able to generally have most of our day-to-day positions filled. So at least able to keep positions that we have in the past, but adding resources is a struggle for us. And because some of our day-to-day people are being pulled for daily substitute needs, it's hard to provide all those services. So we've got funds that we had allocated for budgeted spends this year that aren't going to matriculate, that we'll have to keep. We probably need to go back to the drawing board on a handful of those.
On that note, and I think Megan had mentioned it earlier, and I talked to some other districts, and I know they were trying to get together to maybe do some lobbying to the state or to find out about stretching the ESSER funds over a longer period of time. Is there a group we can, latch on to do that? Strengthen numbers and get a bigger lobby to try to stretch it out to 5 years or something like that?
Yeah, LUDA will be our direct arm for that, the Large Unit District Association. Generally, they're who we rely on for most of our lobbying efforts. I also think, although we're not as directly involved, the Illinois Association of School Administrators, through their national arm, the National Association of School Administrators, will lobby for that very strongly, but mostly LUDA will be our lobby arm.
I think Rockford has their own lobbyist.
They do, yes.
We can maybe piggyback on that too.
Yes, if the board would like me to do that, we could look into and bring back some options for funding that directly.
Ultimately, I would be in favor of that, because if it doesn't get extended, we just lose the money, correct?
Getting more time. But then also, as you mentioned, coming back around and reevaluating the things that were non-starters for the various reasons and reallocating those monies to, and, you know, we have a shot now at saying, okay, maybe what we thought were needs before that we couldn't fill, where could we better place those funds?
I think there's a couple areas that we can try again, as Dr. Reisman mentioned, when we get into that hiring season, there's some that probably we should legitimately try again. And then the other thing is from the ROE, we've requested just regionally how everybody was spending their money. So we should have that information pretty soon too. Just a recap of some of the other districts.
Yeah. Some of what we're getting back from the ROE, I appreciate that, Dr. Johnson, you're right. Some of what we're getting back from the ROE is that while we didn't initially prioritize any type of capital expenditures, some districts are using probably the biggest difference. I mean, everybody's trying to support students as much as possible, but some districts are using this as an opportunity to invest in some of their air quality facility efforts. So while I think the board did make a good decision in saying, hey, let's focus as much as we can on students as we're going through this over the next couple of years, that might be something that you continue to just keep in the back of your mind.
I don't know if it's permissible under the grant funding, but I know there was some conversation a couple of months back at least about from an IT perspective, our bandwidth and whether or not revisiting that would be, you know, a good idea, given that we might have to shift to stuff over services to a certain extent. Maybe it would be, maybe we explore it just as a.
That's an
Put it out there.
excellent thing we should do.
Yeah, Tyler did start looking into that. We did talk about that last month or the month before, and I'll follow up with Tyler to see where he's at on that. I think we've got Mr. Booker. I think like usually in February we're talking about E-rates. So E-rate will be on the Business Services Committee agenda. So we'll probably naturally start talking about bandwidth during that conversation, so we can keep that going. I think that's great feedback.
In regards to the use of permanent tutors for remote and then also synchronous learning for students that are home on exclusion. I know utilization has been low. Do we have utilization numbers since last month or since November?
I can get an updated numbers to the board on that.
And then our Care Solace contract, is that an annual contract and is that available currently on our website, or what is the?
Yes, so
term or-
with the approval before winter break, we were able to get everybody trained this month. And then we are going through all our communication tools in consultation with Care Solace to launch that information in February. So I would say by mid-February, we should have that up and ready to go. But so far we've trained admin, psych, social workers, counselors, deans. Yep. And then they really have a lot of really nice communication tools. So we're just in the process now of organizing what makes sense for our families. And they do come in English and Spanish, which is nice. So that we don't have to go through translation. We're able just to push that out when we're ready. So by mid-February.
And then that'll be something that we have until next February.
Go back and look at the contract if it's through December when we approved it or what the date was, but approximately 1 year. It was a 1-year contract. And then with the quarantine tutors, at least for elementary, it's still looking around that 25 to 30% utilization. It's remained pretty consistent. Hard to tell the last few weeks because of the changes from the 10-day to the 5-day, but leading up through December, it's consistently stayed between 25 and 30% of the families using it.
The higher numbers.
December for sure. Again, January is a little hard because it's 10-day and 5-day, but it doesn't look like anything that's way out of whack from that.
I don't have anything else on ESSER. So we've included department highlights, a budget calendar. I think a lot of times in January, we're talking in business services about budget priorities, but I didn't, we didn't have that this month, so I pushed that to February just during the transition. So that would be something that if the board has priorities for the budget calendar, they could get that to Mr. Bucher or Ms. Hauk for us to discuss in February at the Business Services Committee meeting. And hopefully we'll have a CFO there as part of that meeting to help that conversation. We've got school activity reports on the list. And the look ahead, potential items for the future include the budget. Like I mentioned, there's a list of things on there that include the continued discussion around the solar proposal, the food service contract, the superintendent search, 6-day enrollment for the beginning of the second semester. We do need to discuss the school district has a seat on the community building complex, and Dr. Brown had been filling that seat and is currently in that seat, but he said he'd go ahead and keep going to their meetings until we get somebody that can be on that in that position. We've got a special board meeting coming up on Thursday, a couple committee meetings, and then in February of note is on an annual basis, pre-COVID times at least, we would have an annual town hall meeting at the end of February or middle of February. We've got that scheduled tentatively for the end of February at Belvedere High School. And generally, this has been, at least historically, this has been an opportunity for the community to come to a less formal, sometimes it's, you don't know what to expect at a board meeting, or rules, motions, and sometimes board meetings can be intimidating, but the board town hall is meant to just be an informal opportunity for us to give anybody an update on how the district is doing that comes, and for them to ask questions in an informal environment. And that's all I have.
Anyone else have anything else for discussion? Hey, do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting? Member Herrera made a motion and Member Bucher seconded the motion to adjourn the meeting. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Meeting adjourned at 8:46.
Thank you, everybody.